we had the program. Got it. We had the program last November on the coiling, and I showed a lot of different kinds of coiling. And so I'm not going to go into that a whole lot, and I don't have a whole lot of samples, but everything that I'm going to show you here are mine. And so it's okay to record this. And if we want to keep it, we can put it on the YouTube channel, because I'm only going to show you my work, and it's nothing that's copyrighted by anyone else. So right
Carol,
here.
excuse me, just one second. So if anybody doesn't want to be on the recording, their picture, you need to take yourself off the screen because it's going to go on YouTube. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Ann. I'm glad you remembered that. So anyway, we had there are a lot of things you can do with coiling, and I just wanted to show a few of them as a refresher. So this is a necklace that I was working on at the time, and I am pinned on this screen that shows the work, right?
No,
I'm pinned on the other screen.
that one. Now I see it.
Okay. So this screen, this necklace was one I was working on at the time, and the whole thing is coiled.
Even the middle?
Yes. And that's the point I wanted to make. This is coiled, and it's still got a lot of flexibility to it. This is the wax linen, like I recommended in the supply list. And it's got a lot of flexibility because it's just over a single strand, and then some of the strands are fastened to one another. But this is the same wax linen over the same twine. Now this is a smaller twine than what I had you buy, but this is kind of hard and rigid, and that's because it's fastened together more. And then this decoration in the middle is just a piece of paper that I collaged together. And I wanted to show you the back. See how this is all coiled too, but it's more rigid. I can press on this with my fingers, and it's pretty hard. I can press on my other part with my fingers, and it's pretty flexible. So there's a lot of variation you can do.
Carol, is it easier if I switch the pin to the one below, or do you want to keep holding up?
I think this is okay. It doesn't matter to me.
It
doesn't matter. As long as people can see it okay.
Okay.
So now this is a piece that I did. It's I got into the bracelets when we did the exchange, and the one that I gave Paula was coiled over the twine with the wax linen. This one is also coiled over the same twine, but it's mostly wrapped with sari silk. And yeah, this one's entirely wrapped with sari silk. I did a couple of different ones. I forgot which one I had there for a second. And anyway, I wanted to show you how flexible. Squash this up. So even with the twine, it's the wax linen that will make it rigid and hard. I'll show you my necklace I'm wearing. And I know you've seen all these things before. This is just single, all the black is coiling. And this is just single pieces of coiling fastened together intermittently, but instead of wrapping it over twine only, it's wrapped over metal, it's over wire. So it's a lot stiffer. And that allowed me to make pieces like this, where I can shape them exactly how I want them to be.
How did you end that piece?
Well, I'll talk about that.
Okay, good. That is gorgeous.
Thank you. And then I've got this sculpture I did, and I've caught it on some. Okay, here we go. And see, I can hold this up, and it's pretty rigid. There is some wrapping over wire in these parts here that are sticking up in the air, because if you wrap it over a single piece of twine, it's going to have a certain amount of rigidity to it, but not like if you wrap it over wire. But all of these pieces are just linen over twine, and they're pretty rigid. I mean, I could squeeze them and misshape, shape them a little bit. I'll do it this way so you can see my fingers going into it.
Mm-hmm.
But they hold their shape pretty well. So that allows you to do things that are kind of sculptural. And then I'll point out one more piece. I made a piece of art that has nothing to do with coiling, but I was thinking, how am I going to hang this? And I ended up doing coiling over the top of it. And
Good idea.
that gives you something rigid to hold this piece of flexible fabric out. And then I also have a little bit on the back so I can stick that over a nail and let it hang by that. And so that's another idea, but I don't know if you can tell it too much on here, but some of this is thicker than other parts of it. And that's just a combination of a couple of different pieces of the twine underneath. And then I wrap over all of it. And then there's on the ones that I wanted to be stiff so that I could, put it on a nail, I incorporated wire in with it. So I've got like maybe a couple pieces of twine and a length of wire, and that gives me a nice rigid piece here. This is rigid. And then this one right next to it is flexible because I didn't bother with the wire because I wasn't going to use that for hanging. But this is the one that comes around behind. And I knew I was going to be using that for hanging. So that's the kind of thing you need to think about as you're designing, what is this going to do? Do I want it to be stiff? Do I want it to be flexible? And so, like I said, in the description that I sent to you guys, you can do a lot of different things. You just have to plan ahead a little bit. So now, Anne, if you could put the slides up, please. I think I'm ready for that.
Okay, give me a moment. I need to unpin you.
Mm-hmm.
But my mouse is hiding, so you'll have to give me a second. Where are you, mouse? Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. Oh, there it is. What are you seeing?
I see it. It's up.
It is up?
It's up.
Okay.
It's just not on the slide view yet.
Okay, just give me a moment because it's not showing me that. Okay, I've got the chat.
Now it's
Okay.
on the slide view.
Okay, is that the way you
Okay.
want it?
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
wait, I want to also, I'm not sure what happens if people talk, does the sharing go away for some people? The
I
screen
like
share?
I don't know.
No,
Just like,
no, it doesn't go away.
Sharing does not go away.
okay, good. Then I
Yeah,
don't
this
have to do anything.
This is the first meeting I've done in a long time when I wasn't just looking at my phone, so I don't know what to expect. I can see a lot better. As you may notice that I'm not doing this the whole time.
Yeah.
And that's because I've actually got a screen that's big enough to see for a change. Thanks, Anne. Okay, so what I have here is a series of slides, and I'm going to run through those really fast because this isn't where we're going to do the learning part. But what I wanted to do was provide enough slides so that when you, if you want to try this and you work along with me, if you fall behind or anything, or if you want a refresher later on to kind of get a better idea of what was said, you could come back and look at these slides and say, oh yeah, that was the first step, and that was the next step, and so on. So the first point I want to make is if you've got a ball of twine, probably the first rule I should say that isn't written on here is don't take the rubber band off of that ball of twine. It's just like knitting yarn. If you let it fall into a mass, you might be sorry. It'll get tangled up. So try to keep it together as long as you can. It usually comes with something tied around it or a rubber band, and leave it that way. And then don't cut it because we're going to work with that complete. And then the only thing that you need to cut is the linen, and you'll thread that onto a tapestry needle. Next slide, please.
I'm working on it.
I know.
Well,
This is all Ann's fault that it's taking this long.
that's very true.
No, we're doing the best we can with the tech we've got and the knowledge we've got.
I don't know why I didn't want to advance, but there you
That's-
go.
It's fine now, it's there. So the first thing you're going to do is to thin out the twine and try to get those ends. It's got 4 plies in it, and so you just kind of unply it and trim each of those at an angle and try to make each ply a different length. Next slide, please. So you'll end up with something that looks like this: a long piece, a slightly shorter piece, a slightly shorter piece, and so on. Next slide, please. After you've done that, then you try to put that back together and try to create a pointed end. And at this point, if you've got some beeswax, that comes in handy. It kind of puts things back together. Next slide, please. And that's the extra one. Keep going. That was a slide I tried to get rid of. It doesn't appear in the lineup, and so you can't delete it. But when we show it on the slide view, it always shows up. So figure that one out.
It's a mystery.
Yes, it's a mystery. So then you're going to hold your linen and your twine together, both in one hand. This is going to be showing you for a right-hander because that's what I am. But if you're a left-hander, just reverse it. And you want one end going one way and the other end going the other way. Next slide, please. Oh, and you also hold the end that does not have the needle on it. You're going to be working from the opposite end.
How do we know, and maybe you'll get to this, but how do we know how long to cut that linen? Because you said you do cut the wax
Well,
linen.
I usually cut it too long, so cut it less than that.
Good answer.
Okay,
If you're a sewer, you know how if you've cut your thread too long, it gets tangled up. But if you've cut it too short, you have to keep replacing it.
oh,
So
okay.
you kind of find that happy medium that you're at ease with. I would rather have it too long and untangle it than I would to have to put a new piece on every once in a while. So I always cut mine too long. I usually hold it out and do it a couple of arms lengths, and I'm talking both arms.
Oh,
So
okay.
when we get to the live demo part, you'll see me pulling lots and lots and lots of thread through. But you don't have to be that way. I mean, do what's comfortable for you.
And you will
Yeah.
show us how to attach a new thread if we've
Yep,
gone
yep,
too short?
that's gonna
Okay,
be-
good.
Yep. So anyway, you begin wrapping and you hold that in. And now I've probably held that a little farther away from the cut end of that twine than I normally would. But anyway, you get the idea. You start wrapping and you're going to take the yarn over, or you're going to take the wax linen over the top away from you and then down under the bottom toward you. And next slide, please. And you continue wrapping. You try to keep the wax linen one right after the other without gaps in between them, but not overlapping. And what I'm trying to say in that bottom, that last sentence there is, if you've wound it and you've got gaps, you just kind of snug it up with your hands. You could scoot it along the edge of the twine. Next slide, please. And after you get it to a certain point where you've got enough of it wound, you're going to bend that end over. And this is where pliers come in handy, because it is sort of hard to push with just your hands. Now, when I learned this, I learned it from Fern Jacobs, and she's like a master at this stuff, and she builds some amazing sculptures. And she never said use pliers. That's something I came up with, and it's just, so you don't have to do them, you don't have to have them, but if you do have them, I find them handy. So anyway, that shows me squishing it in between the pliers to create a loop there. Next slide, please. And at that point, you start wrapping the two ends together, the piece you folded over and the other end. And you're going to make a figure 8 stitch, and it's over the top of the upper twine, bring the cord back through the center, over the bottom of the, over the top of the bottom twine, and then through the center, and you pull it tight. And this will be easier to understand when you see it in person and live. Next slide, please. And you can keep doing the figure 8 stitches to cover the bottom twine, or up at a certain point, you can just start wrapping the two of them together. When it gets down to the thin part, I usually wrap the two of them together. And it's just to snug that up and try to make that end blend into the other portion. Next slide, please. And if you have handled your twine enough that it's starting to get fuzzy and looks like it's got an afro, just trim it. And you might also use some beeswax to smooth it down against the other more solid twine. Next slide, please. And eventually you get this thing under control. This is the most difficult part for me, just getting that first loop made. And once I've got past that, I feel like I'm home free. So anyway, as you're winding that, I'm going to start looping that loop around again. And so as you can see, it's kind of curved there, and I keep pulling tight. Next slide, please. And once it's got enough extra linen around it, you can start doing another coiling, I guess you'd call it. And you just put that through the center and firm it up with the figure 8 stitches. And at the top of that, you'll see where there's a few gaps. And you can snug those up, or you can recover, you can go back and forth a little bit over this. I mean, some of these places have more than one wrap on it. It doesn't make that much difference because the linen's thin, but you'll see that as we go along. Next slide, please. And this is how you add a new piece of linen. So when you come to the end of your linen, you just do it pretty much like I just started the first piece of linen. You're going to have the tail end of the old piece. You see that in the maroon. And I'm adding a different piece in another color so that you can distinguish them. And you just hold it against the twine again, and then begin wrapping in that figure, in that over the top and under the bottom motion. And next slide. After you've got a couple of wraps, you're covering both of the ends with your wraps up against the twine. You're holding the old end and the new end. And when you've got it just a few wraps, then next slide, you'll begin sewing in that figure 8 again. And the way you do that figure 8 is you take it from the loose twine that you're adding, and you take it down below the other stitch or the other row of coiling. Now you'll notice that I had done a lot more work on this. I'm not working with the same piece at the beginning, but it's the same concept. You just take it down below the other row and do the figure 8 stitch. And in this sample, I'm showing the carried thread, how you can conceal that under the other wrap. So I've got two pieces of new thread sticking out there to the left, the old end and the new end. And you add a new one when you've run out of the old end, and you just have a little bit left, not enough to sew with. Or you can add it when you just want to change a color. In this case, I'm just changing a color. So it's the same method both ways. Next slide, please. And this shows that I've added, I don't know, maybe 10 coils or 10 wraps around that top piece. But you only see one wrap on that bottom row that shows up in tan. And that's because you can use either one of those cords that's sticking out to the left, either one of those colors of linen to make that figure 8 stitch. I've made a couple of figure 8 stitches to the right of that tan stitch in the maroon, and it matches the row beneath. Or you can make it in the new color and it gives you contrast. It's your choice. Next slide, please. Anyway, that's how you make a pattern. I mean, you can make little little bits of color like I did just there, and then you could do the same spot in the next row, and then you'll get a stripe that goes up. Or you can do it all the way, or keep coiling in the tan and you'll get a stripe that goes around, or you can just do dots of it. I mean, if the next row was all burgundy instead of tan, you'd get like a little dot. Next slide, please. And this is how you end. You cut off your twine at an angle, and then you can thin it out the same way you thinned it out when you started. Next slide, please. And I work in the end of the twine, and on something that I know I'm only going to be seeing one side of it, I just bring it around to the back and end it back there. And it depends on how much it's going to be seen as to what I do with it. And when we get back off of the slides, I can show you some examples of different ways I've ended it. If it's not ever going to be seen, I don't get too finicky about it. If it is something that you might see both sides, then I take a little bit more care. Okay, next slide, please. When I want to end the linen, I continue wrapping the linen over the twine, but then I add another separate tapestry needle that I wrap into the end of the, I guess you'd have to call it the end of the wrapping. And so I'm coming in this view, I'm coming from the right and going toward the left. And so you see, I put the eye of the needle to the left and the point of the needle to the right. And I've just wrapped it over that using my other needle to make figure 8 stitches. And then the next slide, I'll show you what happens next. I take the thread off of the wax linen thread off of the needle that I was using to make the stitches, and I put it into the needle that I've wrapped into the coiling. And then next slide, I just pull it through. So I pulled that needle through. I've still got a little bit of that wax linen that needs to be pulled through, and it's going underneath those last few stitches that I made. You just pull it all the way through and tighten it up and cut it off, and that conceals the end of your thread underneath several wrappings. And I believe that's the last slide. So if that doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now, keep in mind that was a reminder of how to do it after you've learned it by watching this next part, hopefully. And now, Anne, if you could pin me on the, that's the one. Okay, so here's where we begin. And I've got a piece of twine that I've cut. And contrary to my instructions about how you do this normally, I've just cut it off because I'm not going to do a great big project here. I'm just going to show you how to get started, how to continue, and how to finish. Now, if you think that you want to keep yours attached to the ball of twine, that's fine. But mine's cut off for that reason, and that I wanted to let you know that in case you see that end. Anne's fixing my lighting, I think. Is that better?
They were both fine.
Oh, they were both fine? Okay. So anyway, I fray that out. I get myself some scissors. And I just cut a little back from the edge, and I try to make it at an angle. I have to hold my mouth just so to get my scissors to cut.
Of course.
Well, these scissors have been around a while. I may need to sharpen them. The next piece gets cut back a little bit farther. A little bit farther. Guess I didn't get it all.
I can loan you a sharper pair.
From Vermont. I don't think it's going to get here in time.
Actually, I have the exact same pair because you gave it to me right here. Would you like them?
Now that's the last cutting I'm going to do that involves this heavy twine. So anyway, you end up with a piece of twine that's got a staggered end. And then you try to twist it back together as best you can. And I'm going to grab my beeswax and just go over it a little bit. This is not, I didn't put it in the requirements because it's not something that Fern required when she taught me. So I know you can do it without it, but I kind of like to put the beeswax on it. And I've made a mess of Ann's piece of fabric. Then I introduce my linen. I'm going to hold the linen going the opposite direction from the twine. And I'm going to begin to wrap. Can everybody see what I'm doing all right?
Yes. Now, you had said once you did the beeswax that then you, maybe you'll do that in the next step. You pull that twine to a point.
Yeah, well, this is my point. It's not great.
Okay.
It's a bad point,
Okay.
but it is not super important at this
Okay.
juncture. So I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little bit of gap between those
Mhm.
rows. So I just take my finger and snug it up a little bit.
Okay.
But I don't snug it up so much that I pull it off at the end, because then you have to say nasty words. And we don't want to hear all that.
I don't know. I might need to learn some new ones.
I
My
don't know
others are,
new one.
my others are pretty used up.
It's the same old bunch. And this is the easy part because you just coil for a while or you just wrap. I don't know which part is the actual coiling, this part or some other parts. So anyway, I wrap a little while and you see I'm wrapping over this end. I'll eventually cover that all up. I don't know if anybody's working along with me. If you are, let me know if I'm going too fast. And if no one is and I'm going too slow, you may be out of luck. So I try to get a fair amount of twine wrapped around there, or of linen wrapped around there. And then I bring this around like this. See, I've got the two pieces together. And this is where I start to make a figure-8 stitch. And I'm going to run out of this linen way too early. I hate it when I cut it off this short. But I wanted to be able to show you how to add a new piece before too long. And this time I've made it so short that I'm going to have to show you way before I wanted to. So the first thing I did was I took it over this top piece right here. And then I brought it up through the middle. Could everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
And I'm going to bring it around the bottom piece and back up through the middle again. And that's my first figure-8 stitch. And what I'm doing is I'm just moving that linen thread so that it's pulled tight over the top. Through the middle. Over the top of the bottom section. And back up through the middle. That's the figure-8. So I've taken 2 stitches and that's holding together pretty well. If I could get this to turn the right way.
So
And-
you double up on the cording, on the thread.
Yeah, I'm doubling it up. I'm putting the end up against the other part.
And over on top.
I'm going over the top, through the middle. I'm about to run out of thread, so I can't do this too easily. I'm gonna have to add a piece next. But you see, I'm going over the top and back through the middle. Sorry, my hand covers it right when you need to see it, but I don't know any other way to do this. And then I'm gonna bring this back up through the center again, and I'm gonna have to rethread it to get it through there.
So my
Okay.
question, Carol, is you already have yellow or whatever color that is. It's yellow on my monitor. You already have yellow on the twine and you are going over it again or not?
I'm not actually going over it. I'm kind of going next to it, but
Okay.
you can go over it a little bit. I mean, you don't want to make a 5 or 6 stitches in the same spot, but I'm trying to make them slightly to the left of one another. I might not be exactly doing it. I usually hold this a lot closer to my face. So I'm doing this underneath the an iPad, and I'm trying to go next to each other, but I might be a little off. I
Paula,
apologize.
once you go next to each other like that, even if you don't get right next to it, like Carol was showing, they slot, you can push
Yeah, you
them
can push them
together.
around with your fingernails like I'm doing here. I think I do have a couple of, I might have to get out the old magnifying glasses after all. Yeah, I've got one on top of the other. I can see it now. So I just give it a shove. And now this piece of wax linen is way too short. So I'm going to show you how to add a piece now. So I'm cutting it off. I'm going to thread it onto my needle. Yeah, right. Okay, I've got it threaded onto the needle, and I'm just going to put that end away. I'm going to work with the other end and bring it up here, and I've got my old end that I'm running out of right here. I've got the end of the twine that I've doubled over right here. I'm going to add the new end to my hand, and I'm going to hold all 3 of those pieces in my left hand. And then I'm going to wrap, because this is getting close enough to the spot where it's getting thin. I'm going to wrap this over both pieces of twine at once, one time, just to kind of get it started. And then I'm going to take the needle, and you can wrap it over a couple times, 3 times. I'm just choosing to do one time just because. Mostly because I think my end with the bottom end is a little sparse compared to the top. So I'm shoving it into the middle. Can you see that that's going in through the center there? I've wrapped it over. I've wrapped it over the top, and I brought it up through from the bottom, and now I'm putting it through the middle. And if this gets hard to work with, this is where a thimble might come in handy. I don't like a thimble on the end of my finger. Oops, that's coming off. On the end of my finger when I'm doing this, so I have a thimble that I can wear in the palm of my hand, and I'll show you that in a second. And then I pull that up tight. And what's kind of neat about this as you're working with this wax linen is it kind of lets you shape things. So I've got that on there a little bit tight, and it was a little unruly looking to me. And so I just I just shove it with my fingers and it kind of moves into place. And let me show you this thimble I've got. I use one here and that leaves my hands free or my fingertips free so I can, pick up the needle and that kind of thing. But when I get to a spot where it's hard to push, I can push it like this. And I'm just thinking, I've done something wrong. I don't know what exactly I did, but I shouldn't have gone through that middle like that. It needs to be forward when I've just gone through the middle. It needs to be toward me when I'm coming from the bottom. And I messed up somehow. So I'm going to just bring it back to the top. I've probably, I've thrown myself off by talking while I'm trying to work. So anyway, I've got it back to the top and you can do that because I brought it back through kind of a solid spot. I've already wrapped. So I'm going to start wrapping again. I'm going to go over the top. Up through the middle. Over the bottom.
Carol, could you say under the bottom?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm going to go over the bottom twine, but then up through the middle.
but you're going under the bottom. You're going over the top.
I'm
and
going
under the-
over it. This is what I'm considering over. This piece right here is going over and then up through the middle.
So she really goes over both of them.
Right. And all I'm doing right there is just kind of getting that reinforced that it's together. And honestly, I could see that this is kind of fuzzy down here. So what I'm going to do right now is, because I'm having trouble seeing this, I usually do this at a couple of inches away from my face. So I apologize for this being messier than usual. But this looks a little sparser than it does up here. So I'm just going to go around the bottom a couple of times. To try to fill in. But this second yarn or this second strand of linen is very well attached by now. So this is something you can do that it's fairly easy to do this, but this is the hardest part, is getting started. So if you've got some places that don't quite suit you, keep this in mind. You can go over them more than once to fill in. You're going to curl this around again and come back again. So you can always pick up some places, like if you see something that's not covered real well, you can kind of go back to it. And I almost always do things that you're only going to see one side at a time. I haven't done a whole lot where this very beginning is going to show on, this way and this way. This is usually going to be the bottom of a bowl or the end of something that you don't see a whole lot. So this is the messiest part. So anyway, I've gotten through this section where I'm joining them, and now I'm going to go back to winding, and I'm going to wind 3 times, and I'm going to see what I can do about turning this again. You see what I'm doing is I'm trying to fold that up as tightly as I can, because I'm getting ready to connect this part to this part up here. Can you see?
Yes, I can.
Is this making sense to anybody, or is it only making sense to the people who haven't done or have done this
Making
before?
sense. But I
Okay.
need to practice after class.
Yeah, this is the part that takes practice. Once you get past this beginning, it's pretty easy. Okay, so I started to do that and I messed up. So anyway, I think I need to wind a little bit further. So I'm gonna continue to wind this until I've got enough thread covering that twine that when I fold it over again, I can get a good piece of this in there. So now I'm going down into the part that's already wrapped. And sorry, I messed up again. Pay no attention to that. I should have gone over the top and through the middle.
And that's the loop you're talking about through the middle.
Right.
Okay.
Well, no, that's what I did do. And I should have gone through the middle between this and this.
Oh, okay.
So I should have gone over the top, through the middle, and then over the top of this bottom of this. So I went over the top. I went over the top of this, through the middle. And now I'm going to go over the top of the single coil below it.
So you are double coiling, or I don't know what language.
Yeah, over some portions of it. You're gonna, when you make the stitch into the part that's already been coiled, you are going over what you've already got linen on.
Okay.
I didn't understand exactly what you meant, and
Well, I don't have the vocabulary to ask you the question.
Yeah, I don't even know if I've got the vocabulary either. I mean, I just do it. I don't think about it or talk about it. So maybe that's part of the problem. But anyway, I've made one single stitch that went over this. I went around this way, came up through this section right here, over this, and now I'm going to come up through that section again. And that's the figure 8 stitch. And normally I wrap 2 or 3 stitches between, and I've caught one of my ends in the wrong place. I'm going to pull that out and get it back over here where it belongs.
So you don't secure each round?
No, I usually wrap 2 or 3 in between, but when I'm doing this tricky part at the beginning, sometimes I will secure each round. And I'm going to secure this round again, even though I just secured the last round, just because I'm at that spot that's the hardest and that needs the most coaxing to stay where it's going to stay. So I've taken it over the top and around and up through this little slot. And now I'm going to take it over the top of the piece below it and down. And then I'm going to pull it tight. And then I'm going to shove these back as far as I can. And this is a little bit sparser than I would like it to be, but for the purposes of getting through this class before tomorrow, I'm going to let it go that way and just know that I would try to cover that better and shove it into place more, but you don't need to sit here and watch me do that for 20 minutes. So now I'm going to bring it back up through the open section between the 2 layers. And I've sewn a little bit of the twine where it doesn't belong, so I apologize for that. This is hard for me to do and see what I'm doing underneath this iPad.
You're doing great, Carol. Stop apologizing.
Okay,
And
well,
Carol, even though I know what you're talking about, that's not really visible on camera.
okay,
No.
okay.
So they don't
So
know.
anyway, I wrapped it 3 times. So I went ahead and wrapped 3 times around this top section, and that's usually about what I do, 3 or 4 wraps and then through the next part.
Is that only when you're making those tight turns? It's 3 or 4 wraps?
No, you do it, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much
Okay.
what you do the whole time. So I've done 3 wraps and taken it through the open section there. Now I'm gonna bring it back up and do that again. I just need to get this linen in position here because I've kind of 1, 2, 3. You could probably go 4, but I usually do 3. And if I can't keep count, I just do another one and call it 3. Because believe it or
That's
not,
why.
I can lose count before I get to 3. And bring it back to the open section. And then 1, 2, 3. And I keep pulling it tight as I go. Back through that. So that's pretty much it. That's the beginning and the middle. Okay, hang on. I got a note from the producer here. Okay, so the producer says I've got this one that I've already started that she thinks is easier to see. And I'm going to work on that a little bit. But I didn't have one that I needed to work on one that I didn't have started. So that's what I was doing with the yellow one. So what I wanted to show you on this one is this is one that I've already begun and I'm going a long ways on it. And when I began it, I just made it round. And if I kept going, it was going to be quite round, it was going to be even all the way around. But before I got too far, I decided, geez, I think I'd rather have this an oval. So I started shaping it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what you do to shape it. And one of the things that I do is you can go up here and then, let's say I want to make this a lot more oval. I could come out and start going back and forth. And that would keep this the same width here, but I'd have bands going back and forth this way. And then I could cut it and come down here and add bands going back and forth this way. And that way I'd have a long oval. But what I've chosen to do so far is instead, I began to shape it as I was coiling it. I got thinking, gee, I want an oval. And so I cut this at one point and brought the ends to the back. This isn't going to show, so I didn't bother to cut them or to cover them a whole lot. And that allowed me to make a round where I added more on the end than I did in the on the sides, because this was cut and brought to the back. And then over here on the other side, I don't know if you could see this real well. Instead of cutting it, I did one where I just brought the coil to the back. This is kind of raised here. And then it doesn't really show on the face. So on the front side, you've got a coil here. I've got the one that disappears to the back. It disappears here and comes out over here. You don't see it on the front. And then the next time around, I put this one against the one that is hiding this guy behind it. And that allows me to shape it. Same thing right here. I let this go to the back. I don't remember whether it's all the way across. No, this is the one that, no, I don't know. I cut it. But this one I have to the back. And you can see how it's doubled up there. It won't matter because I'm not going to look at this side. This is going to be inside where you won't see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to give it a little shove to tighten it up. And instead of fastening it to this is the last coil I did around here. And I didn't cover it real solid because I can do that as I go past again. But instead of wrapping to that one, I'm going to fasten it to the one before it. And here's where you'll see me pulling about 5 yards of wax linen through there, because I like to cut my linen long. And I'm going to keep doing that, using the end that doesn't have the needle on it. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And push it through. And that's pretty much it. That's how that works. But let me show you a little bit more on shaping, because now that you've seen me do it, it might make a little more sense. So this is the necklace that I showed you earlier. And this centerpiece is a little bit domed. You can see how it punches out here in the middle. And I just did that by shaping it here on the ends. Can you see how that's hollowed out in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
And I started on one side and I made these little loops. And then I thought, well, I got to get a loop on the other side. So I just brought it across, made the loops on the other side, and then brought it to the back and finished it. Didn't get too particular about the finishing because it's always going to be to the back. This isn't going to roll over on your neck because of the way this is constructed and it's fastened. And it's not like one that blows in the wind and then flops over. If it were one that blew in the wind and flopped over, I'd have to get more particular about that. On the ends of things, though, you can just cut them off like I did there and not worry about them. Or if you want to make ends that are, finished off like this, what I've done here is the same thing I've done when we begin, where I wrap it and then twist it over on itself and fasten it to itself. This is the same thing. Does that make sense? I brought this up like this and wrapped it around here and then wrapped around both pieces and coiled over the needle, pulled the needle through and cut it. And then this is how you make this kind of end. This kind of end is the same thing, except instead of turning it over on itself, I just tapered down. This has got wire in it, so that's a hard piece. But I tapered it down by putting a piece of the linen itself inside the coil with the wire. And as I brought it down and narrowed it out, I added a few more pieces to kind of make it look organic. But you just wrap the linen over itself, and then down here where I want it to end, I tied a little knot. And I added some extra pieces because I wanted to make it look like stems of something that had broken off. So that's another way to end. And I'm going to show you this too, but I wanted to show the variety of ways before I went on to do it, because there are several ways to do it. On this bracelet, you can see where there's a row coming here and there's a row coming here, and they kind of join into one. That's either a beginning or an end. I can't tell which. Probably the beginning, because here's the end. You can end it that way, or you can just wrap it to the other side This is probably the end. I don't remember now. But you see, I just wrapped it, brought it down here and sewed it down.
So in
that's,
doing that with the strips of the fabric that you used, how wide were your strips? Are they just like a half an inch?
you know, those ones you can buy pre-cut,
Oh, yeah.
it was those. And I'd
Okay.
say they vary from a half an inch to an inch. So
Right,
they're not
okay.
all consistent, but
Yeah.
yeah, they were probably half an inch to an inch. So it was that sari silk that you buy for knitting.
Right.
And let me see if I can show you some other ends. On this piece, I started at the tail end. So I've got these tails here. And you can see where I doubled it over and made this end, brought it up, and then began coiling it on itself. Kept coiling until I got up here to the other piece, to the other end. And then I narrowed it down again. And I wanted to make this heavy duty, so I put wire in here. I don't have any wire in it until I get up here to the end. But then I wrapped it around, brought it up, made a loop, brought it back, and stuck it inside. It's inside this thing, down buried where you can't see it. And sewed this in with this figure 8 stitch to the other side. So this is real sturdy here. This is kind of rock hard.
Carol, I have a question for you. When you use wire, is that along with the twine inside with the ruby?
I've done it both ways. That piece I just showed you had the twine and the wire. The
Okay,
necklace that I'm wearing right now has just wire in it in a lot of the places. I think I had a little of both. This is probably just wire because see how thin it is?
thinner. Yeah, it's thinner. So, but
Right.
you've done it both ways.
But I think
What-
down in here, see how it's a little thicker?
Yeah, so you
I
have
had
both.
twine and wire.
Okay.
Carol, what gauge wire do you use?
I don't remember offhand. Let me see if I've got it with me. Hang on.
Well, don't,
No,
you
I
can
do have it
email
with
me.
me. It's right here.
Email.
It was 20 gauge. And this
Okay.
is what I have, but whoops, that's upside down. This is what I have, but I don't know where you can get this. I bought this from a garage sale. But 20 gauge doll wire, and it's probably called doll wire because it was made, it was sold through a doll shop. This woman that was selling that, whose sale it was a doll maker too. But anyway,
Even like Michael's has the 20 gauge.
yeah,
Or if
and
you
it
wanted to
doesn't
order
have to be. It
yeah,
doesn't have to
Rio.
be 20 gauge. It just needs to be something that's stiff enough and flexible enough for you to do what you need to do. I've got a lot of wire that I've used for various things that is just old telephone wire. If it's going to be covered, you don't care what color it is. And my husband brings me wire when he goes junking. He finds wire and he knows I like it, so he brings it home and I use it. But if it's you know what you're going to do with it. If it's going to support a person's weight, you're going to have to use something heavy. If it's just going to be to hold something in place, you need it to be strong enough that it'll hold the thing in place, like on a necklace or something. I might not use any wire at all unless I want to do that kind of shaping that I did on this black necklace. But I might put it in the hook that I add to the back just so it doesn't fall apart. But I don't always. Like on this one, I just made a loop and a button, kind of made a little button out of the coiling itself, and then made a loop like that. And it's got no wire in it at all.
Carol, when you have multiple strands, like for that necklace, the gold necklace that you just had, how do you start with a bunch of strands, or you make them along the way, or you turn around, or?
You just on this is a separate piece. Was made with these loops on the side, just
Okay.
just a single loop. I don't know if you can see it. It comes up here, goes around like that.
Yeah, but
This one comes up, goes around like that. That was all one piece, okay?
mhm.
Then I had, I think it is, here's a strand right here. And I didn't have this all planned out in my head beforehand. I kind of start and then see what I feel like doing. Oh, I guess I have a loop down here that's part of, this loop down here is part of this piece too, okay? And it goes around behind, and that's probably where I cut it off. So here's a single strand, goes like this, comes up here. I fastened it together with another strand right there. Comes back down here and goes out this way, fastened it together with something else. So that was a strand. And I think this was a strand. And I might just have those two strands. But I've looped them around in such a way that they look like a whole lot more.
All the way down.
And then the same thing over here. So I'll often make a component and then say, what do I want to put this with? And then I make another component, and then I play with it until I think this is good, or I think I need more, and then, I make more.
Well, it's remarkable to me that it looks planned. They match. They're not
Well-
wildly different.
Well, they weren't real planned. I don't plan out things entirely. I just kind of go with it. So this is one, just a little piece here. And I just wanted to show you another way of ending. So I'm going to do a little end on this that's slightly different. And you can do this on either end, the beginning or the end. So I'm just going along and wrapping, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, this is enough. I think I'm going to finish this piece off. And once again, I'm wrapping over the top and then down one layer. And I've decided I don't want to do a whole lot more on this. So I'm going to cut it off and finish it. So I do the same thing I did before.
And you're using the Italian ruby twine?
Yes. This is the Italian ruby twine in this. And then the one that I used in that yellow necklace was a little smaller. I got this at a place called Weaver House Co., I think is their .com, weaverhouseco.com. But this is the stuff that Fern uses, and she recommended. And so I'm trying to give you the same materials that the great master has. And there's another way to thin this out if you want to get it down to a narrow point faster. Sometimes she gives it a little haircut, just like your hairdresser does. Have you ever seen your hairdresser do this thing where
Oh,
she
yeah.
cuts
Oh, yeah.
into get your ends so they look
It's thinning.
right, thinning?
Or point cutting, yeah.
Is that what that's called?
Mm-hmm. That's what
I
they,
know he says she's thinning, and she uses these special scissors that do that.
Yeah, well, I don't have the special scissors, but
well,
anyway.
I have thinning scissors that I used during COVID to cut my hair and my husband's hair. But they do that. They've said it's point cutting, where you go down into it and add texture, but you don't lose length.
Okay, well, I don't know whether this is adding texture or not, but it's mostly just getting
Thinning.
rid of some of that excess bulk.
Yeah.
So I'm going to add another piece of the same, where am I? The same waxed linen on this that I'm just going to hold on the end. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Yes.
So I'm holding the linen, I'm holding the ends of the twine, and I'm going to finish this thing off. And this is what I did on that piece that I showed you just a little bit ago, where I had the ends that I said I wanted to make look organic. So I'm just going to wrap that extra piece of linen. Yeah, I do that every time. I pull it out 2 or 3 times first. So that was the first time I pulled it out.
That's really comforting, Carol.
Yes.
You know, I think I remember now that once upon a time I decided, you know, it's just better to hold extra and wrap over it and then cut it off. But I'd forgotten that tip that I made up for myself. So you can basically just wrap this baby out until you've run out of the twine altogether. I almost did it again. So when you get ready to pull this tight, grab a hold of that other end. Don't be like me. Do as I say, not as I do. Always good advice. Of course, when your parents say it to you, you want to smack them. But I can keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, pretend that I'm covering this well. I'm not going to take the time to do that because there's a lot of fiddling on the ends. The middle goes pretty fast, well, comparatively, but the ends can take a while because you got to fiddle. So we're just going to pretend like I'm taking my time and getting this well covered. Okay.
What she's doing now also gives you a way, if you hadn't cut that off, to make a new shape, like a hole in it, because she's not connected to the bottom. You could
Oh, yeah.
continue on, and then all of a sudden connect it to the bottom below, and you'll have a hole in your coiling.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to make shapes, and it's really kind of fun to think up how you're going to do it. It's something that you can plan out and get it all, you know, straight in your head and then do it. But I hardly ever do. I usually just start first and then think of it later and have to adjust. Like I was showing you on that piece that I started out making it round and then decided it should be oval. So, okay, so I've got it out here and I might take this out a few more rounds. But so you're thinking, well, how do you keep it from unraveling? And let's say this is all covered and I'm not looking sloppy. We're going to pretend.
We're good at pretending.
Yeah. You just pretty much tie a knot right there because you can pull these pieces of linen thread up pretty tight and you're not going to see that knot too much. Good grief, I can't even tie a knot. All right, I hope I'm on screen because I got to look at my hands. I'm trying to do all this. Yeah, I'm trying to do all this stuff by looking at the screen to make sure I'm still on screen and it's.
Well, we'll try to holler at you if you're off screen.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, I've tied a knot. I can run this one back through. You know, if I don't want 2 ends on there, I can leave it. If I don't mind 2 ends, I can come back and cut this real short and you'll never know it's there. But that's what you do if you want to taper down to nothing or pretty much nothing. And if I wanted to, I didn't wrap this over another needle. I guess I was too intent on getting it wrapped in the first place. But if you haven't wrapped it over another needle, you can just sew back through it. come out. Pull it through. Cut it off. Press it with your fingers to smooth it out. And there you go. So you've got a tapered end there. Let's say another thing you want to do, and I'm going to see if I can pull this thing off. Yeah, I can pull it off. Another thing you can do is if you wanted to have, instead of a solid piece here, let's say you wanted to join two ends together, like if you were making a bracelet that was just a single wrap. And I have made some bracelets this way that were just a single wrap around. And then I decorate them with maybe some silk yarns or something attached. You can thin out two ends, bring the two ends together, kind of wrap them together so that they equal the same amount of thickness as you'd have. I guess that's kind of short to show. Let me grab another piece. This is how you'd add another piece if you've run out of twine, or if you've cut your twine for whatever reason for shaping, but then you decide you want to add some more to it or whatever. You just cut both of your ends, bring it together with the other end, kind of get it like this. A little glue wouldn't hurt right about now. And one thing I've done is before I actually twine, whoops, I'm off screen. Before I actually twine over that, I might take a piece of spare linen and just go over that spot to hold it. And that way, when I went over officially, it would be more in place. But like I said, a little Elmer's glue, a little beeswax, whatever it takes. But yes, you could then double wrap that. So I would continue this on out, cover this, keep going, and you never know there was a cut there. So that's a way to join two ends if you need to add twine, or if you want to make a circle. So that's another thing to know. And then I think I've got one more thing to show you. And this is a cool thing. So right here, where you've got kind of a gradation where I'm going from the purple into the brown, it has a section that's got a little of both in it. And again, you can see some shaping here. I started to show you this, but I want to show you right here's a piece of shaping. Right here's some shaping where I took that coil inside so it could bend. And can you put the screen back to the workroom and unpin the bottom one? The one that's looking down, you know what I mean? I wonder if Ann is there.
Yeah, I unpinned your working purple section. You want me to pin you?
Yes, please.
Okay, you are pinned.
Am I? Okay, I can't see myself.
You can't see yourself in the top iPad?
No, but that's probably because I,
Okay, hold on. Let me try something else.
Well, I pushed that little negative, that minus button a little bit ago because it was covering up some of my screen.
Okay.
Okay, I'm there now. All right.
Okay.
So I'm gonna stand up for this. And all you need to do to get that variegated look is you take your linen. It's real thin, but you can eventually get your fingers in there. Or maybe your scissors. And pull it apart. Well, it's basically all I'm going to show you is I'm going to unply it. But there's a little trick to unplying it. And that's what I wanted to show you.
You need to move over to your left a little. There you
Okay.
go. Thank you.
Okay, got it. See that?
Okay.
And you can pull it apart, but eventually it's just going to knot up. So hang on, you grab something. Like this. And you put it on the end of it. So you've got a weight. And then when you want to unply it, you can just pull it and that weight just twirls around. And once you've got it unplied, you can take another piece of a different color that you've also unplied and twist them back together. And that's how you do that. That's how you move from one color to another.
Wow.
Gradually. And that's a nice time-consuming project that you can spend lots of your afternoons on. So I think that's about it, guys. Unless somebody has some questions and needs me to go back over something.
Is there a book on this subject or?
I have not seen one, but there might be.
Fern hasn't produced a book.
No, she hasn't. Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I thought I had a coiling book. I'm not positive. If I find it, I'll send out the information.
Okay. I'm just thinking, this is like the very old way of learning. One woman teaches another.
Yeah, and I know this is not as good as being together. If you want to call me and ask me questions, that's fine too. I'm on the list.
Carol, is this the same process that you use when you're doing your pine cone work?
I don't do the pine needle wrapping, but yeah, it's the same process except
It's very similar.
Except
Okay.
that instead of pushing the linen threads tied up against each other, you leave a little space and so you see the needles. It's the same
Well-
thing otherwise.
No, Carol,
Isn't it?
well, it is when you're just wrapping, but when you're doing the solid sections of, like, if you look at my pine needles and I have those solid sections of wrapping, it's exactly the same.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I did a pine needle sample one time. Well, Martha, you were there too.
Yeah.
And we took a class where we learned pine needles, and I got about this much done in the class, and that's as much as I ever did because
That's the same with me. I didn't do it. Anne went with it and ran with it.
Yeah, and then I got into doing this, and I have done several pieces this way. So I don't know too much about the pine needles. I don't know too much about this, but I know a little bit more than I do about the pine needles. So
You know a lot about this. I have a question for you on a piece that I was working along with you for a bit.
Mhm.
And I've got this much.
Okay, hang on. Can you unpin me in so I can see Martha? Thank
And
you.
my twine is quite a bit thinner than yours.
Okay, so hold it up again and show me what you've. Okay, that's
Okay.
fine.
So I did like 3 figure 8s over top, over bottom. And now to bring this part in, I'm just going to go over, right?
You can,
Just-
yeah. And
Or-
you've got quite a bit there. I would just trim it off
Trim
some.
some of that off, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because I do feel like I've got quite a bit here.
Yeah, you could do more figure eights if you wanted to put a lot of effort into it, but if it feels like it's pretty solid already, I'd just cut
Yeah,
it off and wrap over both of them together. And then when you get ready to curl around again, then you're going to have to do more figure eights when you get going on the, on the solid areas like this. I don't know if you
Right.
can see me or not, because
yeah.
okay.
But if you're going to be doing, if you just want to do like strips and eventually weave them together to make a necklace or even a bracelet or something,
Mhm.
I don't probably need to do any more figure eights to do that. I mean, you're
No,
just
well-
doing this.
Yeah, if you're just doing a single strand, you're just going to wrap it.
Do it to the right or to your left there. There you go. Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought.
This is just wrapped.
Right.
But I
then-
think, oh, go ahead, Martha, sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
I
I'm
gotta
thinking-
get more people on here. What do I need to push to get the people back in?
That bottom strip, the, you push the plus, I think it's on your left.
I'm not seeing it.
If you're on the iPad, in the upper right-hand corner, it says view. If you put the mouse up there, in the upper right corner, it says view. And that's where I change it.
I
That's
think
where
I'm
changed.
about to get some assistance. Hang on here. Why do you have the camera off? I don't know.
Hang on. There you go. It's on the left here. Switch to gallery view.
Well, I'll leave it alone now.
Okay, you want gallery
you.
view? If you want
No.
a single view, it's down here.
Okay, that's good. I just needed to see other people because I couldn't see what they were talking about. Thanks.
I think Martha and I have the same question. When you made the bracelet, did you mark each row by connecting, or did you make one long piece and then make it smaller?
Okay,
for a
what I did with the bracelet that you got for
Yeah.
the exchange, okay, what I did on that was I made one long row that was big enough to go around an arm,
Right,
and then I joined it. And
okay,
from then on, I was building with the figure eight. So I had this one long row that went around an arm. Let's say this is a piece long enough to go, well, I guess I've got twine here. I can use that as my example.
Well, you have a bracelet too. Oh,
Yeah, but it's already put together. It's kind of hard
Yeah.
to tip. So I had this was all just wrapped. Okay. Then I got to the place where I wanted to join it and I started doing the figure eights. So I'd do wrap, 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 and then a figure eight stitch. Wrap, 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 a figure eight stitch. And then I just built on that.
did it make the place thicker? I'll go get the bracelet and look.
It makes it thicker in the place where you've done the figure eight stitch because it's on top of another row of linen.
Paula,
But
Paula,
it's,
can you go get it and show it to us?
but
Yes,
it's, yeah, that's not so much, that's such a thin thread that it really doesn't show up that much, but you can see the stitches. Like on this guy, if you get really, really close, you can see those stitches that go down below to the next row.
Yeah,
Can you see them?
I'm coming.
yeah, you can. Bye, Mary
Yeah.
Ellen. Carol, just to let you know, Mary Ellen just said, Carol, wonderful class.
Oh, well, thanks.
I think she's leaving.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. Okay, I got you, Paula.
Can you see this?
It's pretty fuzzy.
Yeah,
I-
yeah, Paula, there you go. When you moved it back and you don't move like that. we
Right
can
there.
see.
Okay, so
think- Go
It's-
ahead.
Say some-
I
say
think
some-
it's-
oh,
Your background is fuzzed out, so I think
Yeah.
it's
Well,
fuzzed out.
I did that on purpose so you didn't see my mess. But for you,
Well, here, I'll hold this one up and you can see where the extra stitches go down
There you
below,
go.
can't you?
Yeah,
And
See it?
what I'm looking now at this bracelet and I see it isn't that much thicker. It is a
No.
little thicker, but
Right,
it's not noticeable.
it's not noticeable, and then as you're doing it, you pull it, like on this. You see a little bumpy place every now and again, but it's not like it's real noticeable.
Right.
When you don't know what you're doing, you don't notice it because it just kind of looks like a little bit of a pattern. Once you know what you're doing, then all of a sudden you can see it.
And if you wanted to get real picky about it and count how many wraps I had in between, you'll probably find that sometimes I have 3, sometimes I have 4. Sometimes I've fallen asleep and I've just done one after another because I forgot how many I did. So yeah, it's going over the previous row. When you make that figure 8 stitch, you're going over some sections that are already wrapped.
So that would also apply to a necklace, like that very intricate gold necklace that you have. You, as you work along, you connect as you think, as your whim.
Okay. Well, like this one, this is a separate strand. Here's a separate strand, but here they're attached to one another right there.
Okay.
move it to the left. There.
That's wrapped together. And up here, it's going along, it's by itself, and there it's wrapped together. You can see when you get looking close, I'm showing you all my defects now. You can see it's not particularly smooth, but if I don't show you this in close up,
It looked fine to me when you wore it.
yeah, if you don't look at it with your nose against it, you don't see that stuff. But when you get really close, you start to see it.
But
you
what,
Okay, so-
in order to have 4, I guess there were 4 threads going from your brooch to the connector. You made 2 very long pieces.
Yeah, I think that's what I did. I think I had 2 really long ones on each side. But I made the middle part first, and then I thought, well, now I've got to make something to fasten this around my neck, and so I just started wrapping.
And I
And-
count 4, 1, 2, but that's a lark's head knot right there.
Right, I think this is a single one with a lark's head knot, and then this is a single one with some other kind of something going on. And then I just started arranging them on I got myself a piece of foam rubber and I laid it out there and I started arranging it and pinning it down to see what kind of design I like. And I think I probably made it extra long. I made these strands extra long and started wrapping them around. And once I decided, oh, this is what I want, I cut it off. I cut off the twine and then finished it. And probably ended right in here. Probably brought one end up, wrapped it around, and made a loop.
So that's the hook end, and it's now very narrow, like all those pieces don't show.
Well, I can't remember if I think I ended some of these pieces down in here. I can't remember what I did now, but I think I have one big long piece with a lark's head and one big long piece doubled over here, but I think some of them may have ended shorter that, ended up wrapped up in here and then ended. I think right here's a looped over piece. So I
Okay,
probably had really long pieces of this just wrapped cord. And I just played around with it until I got a design and then cut it down to the size I needed.
Yeah.
But that's in the design part. I mean, if you want to talk about design, that's a whole other thing. This is, I'm just trying to get you to know this is how you start, this is how you go in the middle, and once you're done, this is how you can finish.
Well, I got my iPad out and I looked at some of Fern's work.
Isn't it amazing?
It's absolutely unbelievable. It's stunning.
Now, anybody who's really interested in this, when we sent out the meeting notice, I had included a link to a show that she was in, and you should take a look at it. I mean, it's big sculptural pieces that you could hang on the wall and sit around, and it's really gorgeous. But if you don't have that anymore, send me a text message if you've got
Well, it's a craft in the America.
Right.
Yeah, I have the paper and I love Craft in America. They have such interesting things.
If you just Googled, I did it whatever. The images, Google Images come up with so many incredible pieces of art she's done.
Yeah. She's been doing it for years and years and years. So, I mean, you can look at hers and get a great deal of inspiration. And if you want, I can send you some pictures of some of the insides of hers where she's cut off pieces and cut them short just so she could shape things. And I just didn't want to put it on this because we're trying to keep this so we could put it on YouTube if you want.
Well, I have to first get my first piece done. I haven't even started. So yes, I'm interested because her work is just jaw-dropping.
It is. It's gorgeous.
Oh,
And
she's
that
really
reminds-
nice and very easy to work. We were at her house, and to see all the things she has there, she's really nice to work with.
If they ever offer another class, take it.
Yeah.
It was really inspiring.
Well,
Carol,
Emma-
can I just show something? Martha, I think you asked about the pine needle basket and how it does. You
Hmm.
see the wrapping in the pine needle basket when I have the solid colors like that. In those places, that's exactly the same thing, but these stitches, which go into the row before, it's actually the same thing. You just haven't wrapped in between.
Right.
So if you did that, the way you did the pine needle basket, you're doing the same thing. And then in here, like you can see, it's coiled just like Carol did and not attached. And I've left a hole for the bead, and they could be very big, like these are going to be a big hole. This will be just coiled all the way over the
Wow.
walnut things. But so if you did that, it's very similar way of
Well-
joining it to the next row and everything.
And it was interesting because as I was starting to do this, or actually as I was watching her and then I started to do it, I thought, boy, this
Feels-
is reminiscent of something I've
familiar.
done.
Yeah, it's very similar. I found going from the pine needle to the coiling, there was just it's the same wax linen and everything. The only thing that's different is the jute in between, the ruby.
Right.
And
I just got really excited about the coiling more than the pine needle because I saw Fern's work and oh wow, this is something spectacular. And I think because she inspired me, I went with this more than the pine needle. But it's just the same thing.
Yeah.
Hey, Ann, do we want to keep recording or have you stopped already?
I have not stopped. I can stop now.
I think we're to the chit chat stage.
Okay, I will stop recording.